What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the basement. We're here with David Kann and Ryan Matta, the creators of Zadar the Savage. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. David, as always, welcome back.
Thank you, Pete.
Hey, Pete.
Appreciate it. How you
Thanks
doing
for
today?
having us.
Fantastic. You guys have a Kickstarter coming very soon. Actually, by the time this show airs, the Kickstarter will already be, well, started up.
Yes, we tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow, Tuesday at noon, the June 14th.
Fantastic.
You know, the trailer we think works really well, and when you watch it, it's like, man, I want to see that as a movie. Yeah.
I think you'll like it.
I watched the trailer. It's fantastic.
Oh, good. Yeah.
It plays like a movie. Yeah, no, it's great.
It actually came out fantastic, and it's like watching it, you're just sitting there going, man, those guys show up with the Tommy guns and start in there with the bow and arrow. It's like, bring that on. I want to see that live action happening, you know?
Yeah, it's really cool. Have you ever thought about doing like a motion comic? You know, because I mean, there's a lot of that going around on YouTube and shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I have an animator that I've used for all my Berserker trailers and stuff, and she's great because what she does is I send her just the panels, and she makes them, she animates them, so she animates them, you know, very, you know, when I get them back, they're slow, and so what I do is I change all the speeds on them so I can get them, you know, to, you know, however I need the character to move. But the fact that she's able to do it, just our comic panels is fantastic.
As a graphic artist myself, I know how that's done, and I'm like, it's I wouldn't say it's a difficult task, but it's a tedious task. It's no small feat to do all of that, and whoever you've got doing it, she's great. From one professional to another.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you. I'll pass it along to her.
Yeah. So always good to get compliments on your work. Yeah. As I'm watching the trailer, I was like, yo, this is really awesome. Like, you know, I like simple stuff like that. The stuff moving and everything.
Amen. Yeah.
Well, and it's you know, and the other thing too is that, you know, because we don't have you know, we have pages on the page and all that stuff too to show it. But I feel like a nice motion graphic for the trailer always is, it really just kind of sets the tone and the mood of all that stuff. And I think, you know, one of the things we're trying to do more of is really make the Kickstarter and the merchandise and the book and all that stuff very much into the world. Like, so you're you know, it's not, oh, hey, we're doing Kickstarter, so it has to look like this. It's like, no, let's make it all look like one homogenized thing. So you don't, you know, it's a built-in universe that you're kind of extracting from it, you know?
Right. You know, we're talking so much about the trailer. Obviously, let's just play it right now for everybody.
Okay.
High above an enemy compound in Africa, Zadar strikes without warning. Issue 2 cover by artist Simon Bisley. While hunting for the man who destroyed his life, which lead him to Cairo, Egypt. Variant cover by Pablo Debonis. With the Jewel of Relie as one of those clues, Zadar meets up with his friend Akachi. Schneider sets the trap. New works from Corlin Kruger and Jason Lennox. Zadar gets a little help from Detective Ward Lovecraft. All rewards are ready to ship. Revenge has only one name, Zadar the Savage, in this action-packed adventure series, now on Kickstarter.
So this is actually issue 2. I don't know how I slept on issue 1, Dave. Usually I'm up on all your projects.
Yeah, no worries.
So I did have the privilege of reading issue 1 before we got to start this interview, and it's really cool. Honestly, it's a lot bloodier than I expected it to be.
Yeah, we've heard that.
No complaints here. I love a good, honestly, it should be. You know, this guy's running around the jungle and these people are coming into his home, just, you know, messing everything up for him.
Right.
I'm going to kill you for that. That's, yeah, you're not allowed in my house. Fantastic. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the room first.
Sure.
There's an obvious comparison to Tarzan.
Correct.
Now, you guys were working on a Tarzan project with the Burroughs family, and that kind of went by the wayside, unfortunately. And this is now, you know, you had it all done. Might as well do something with it, right? That's pretty much where this came from.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, we had spent several months with talking to them, and you know, basically by the end of it, we parted ways amicably. We just felt that we'd have a lot more freedom without them. And there were certain stipulations that they were requesting that we were kind of worried about how it was going to affect our character down the line. That with it being Tarzan, because we wanted to kind of go in our own direction with the books, so then we're just, always based in the ERB lore. But that just, it kind of became slightly problematic. So, we all parted ways, and they're like, have fun with it. And we said, thank you. And, they offered us to come back again and, to work with them on something else down the road. So that's the good thing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, they have their own, they have their own interests, and just as we started to write it, it always sort of been just a jumping off point in the first place. I mean, we always saw it as like kind of an expansion of like more of like a jungle character, in the way that I was watching a Mission Impossible the other day, and the way those movies are like taking like all the best stuff from James Bond movies, but they're not beholden to having to have him come in and order a martini, and he doesn't have to have. So that's sort of how we look at this. I mean, a little bit of Tarzan, but there's a lot of characters in our guide too. There's a lot of like 80s action hero in them. And, as the kind of story grew, first we said, yeah, we'll do a Tarzan book. That'd be cool. And then, but as we started writing the story, it kind of grew and grew and grew. And the limitations and the need to abide by a certain lore was getting in the way of the story, and to the point where you haven't seen the second book much of it, just like the samples. Yeah. So, but it's so we got Lovecraft into that book.
I was about to say, I was really looking forward to that. I noticed that immediately as I was reading the first book, and Zadar hands Rose the jewel of Rajay, and I'm like, oh, we're going Lovecraft in this. Okay, this is going to be fun. I mean, I shouldn't expect anything less of you, Dave. But
right, of course. Yeah, so there was a few things we had to change in there, but we, and so, because in the ERB they have the jewel of Opar, so we wanted to have Varye. So, and
I didn't even know that. Like, honestly, I'm not too well versed in Tarzan lore, but I can see how like having to stay within those parameters can fence you in as creators. It's like you want to do your own thing, you want to have fun with it, and if you're just beholden to basically what came before you, what are you really doing as creators? You're just retelling a story.
Yeah. And again, it opens it up to like, we have complete free reign. But that said, a lot of that Tarzan stuff, the stories are in the public domain, and, it is still a reference point, because there's good stuff in those things, but there's good stuff in Sylvester Stallone movies too. What I mean? So there's a lot of
plenty of good stuff there.
That's just it. We didn't want to have to pull from one place.
Well, and we had always talked about putting Lovecraft, mixing the universes together. So that was always kind of in the back of our mind too, because once you obviously start working with other folks with other IPs, there's copyright and so on and so forth. So it gets very complicated. So for us to kind of just go out and do our own, and we always had Zadar as a name. We were kind of joking at the beginning of, when we went to speak to ERB about it, we always had a kind of a backup plan with our own name, anyways. Which was basically started as kind of just an in joke. And so when all that had passed, we're like, well, he's Zadar now. Perfect. Yeah. So, and it works because we wanted, for us, the name's always important because you want a name. Tarzan's a great name.
Right.
And so, but it's a one word name. So we wanted something that had a Z and it had, but it had an impact. So when you say Zadar or Zadar, it's, this is kind of a character and you're like, who is this guy? So, and then making him Zadar the Savage, like you said, it's bloody. In the second book, brutal. So it's one of those things we just want to kind of elevate everything, a little more to kind of just, definitely separate our character from any other version of this type of noble savage.
Yeah. And he is different too. Like as the story grew, so did some of the stuff around like we have a very interesting, like big arc for this. We have that we'd love to like be able to realize, but like as that story grew, we're like, well, Tarzan's like the ape man, but our guy's not the ape man. This guy wasn't raised strictly by apes. He's more like a Jungle Book kind of, you know what I mean? He talks to all the animals, more like a beast master kind of thing. And, why that might not seem like too big of a difference. It's kind of important. Like
they made sure to call him that. Like, they said he's king of the beasts. And, I noticed he's talking to pretty much all of the animals and everything. I also noticed like you guys didn't really waste too much time with his origin story. Like here he is, he's in the jungle, and now these people are coming after his house, and he doesn't, he's not living in a cave. He's got a nice mansion, a whole plantation going and everything, and seems to be well versed, in speaking, and he's not quite the Savage until you piss him off. Other than that, he's
right,
very distinguised gentleman.
Right, exactly.
He's a nice, happy guy when we start the story. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is too is that goes back to kind of when you look at all the Tarzan movies and mainly the movies because that's what we grew up on. And the TV shows, they spend a lot of time with his upbringing, a lot of time with him just kind of futzing around, going from the jungle to eventually getting into the whole modern society and all. And so we feel like that's kind of been done. It's like telling the origin story for a superhero 10 times.
I was about to say it's Batman syndrome all over again.
Exactly.
We know. They get shot. Move on.
Right.
You see it in the character's actions, even if you had never heard of this guy before, or maybe there's no one on the planet who hasn't heard of Tarzan because he's been around for so long. But this sort of icon and this trope. But even if you didn't, his actions will tell you that because you see what he does in the course of the first story. Mm-hmm. He talks, he calls, so you don't have to say it. It's just audiences aren't dumb. People aren't dumb. They will acceect that if the guy's standing around a bunch of animals.
They'll definitely accept that.
And the other thing too is we wanted to pick up the character where he was, he was already settled in his life.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a good, because everybody knows that situation. Everybody knows like if you're settled at home, you're, hanging out, at your estate, house, wherever it is, and then somebody's coming in and kind of disrupting. That's where we decided to kind of pick it up and go because it's a perfect, it's just a perfect jumping off point where you've already kind of set the story up a little bit with, his background and where he lives. And then we just kind of thrust him into this action. And the kind of fun thing with it too, is that again, if you look at the old Tarzan movies and stuff like that, his interaction with people outside the jungle was, very limited, it seemed, whereas with us, he's already had a life. He was in the military and all that. So when you see him in the first book,
I noticed that. Yeah, the guy said like we served together and like
right.
Yeah, that actually made me curious. Like, all right, if he had a life beforehand, how did he wind up here? So I do hope you touch on that in the future because that really made me curious.
Yeah, I mean it goes back to also in the Tarzan stuff too. He never likes the modern society so much. So he always wants to be that kind of guy. Back. Familiar with what he's grown up with, so he doesn't like this chaos and all this modernization of the world because that's foreign to him, So for us having that kind of impede on his, his kind of quiet life, I think is great. And then how the story ends with his wife,
that was harsh.
Then his best date buddy getting plugged, it's just
my God, I couldn't believe that. I was like, ow, that hurt me.
Well, that's where, like you said, we were saying about distinguishing the character and the freedom to be able to do what we want with the character. I mean, he looks like Tarzan, but that's Mad Max you're looking at there. You know what I mean? That's Harrison Ford. And that's a pretty classic. I mean, what can you do? The guy who's just minding his business and is at peace with the world, and he's, and somebody comes and ruins his day and his life. And there's, so many of those great movies in the 80s. I mean, it's a good place to go because, we all,
The thing I found most intriguing was, going towards the end of the book where Schneider is confronting Rose. They're in the house and everything. And he's like, oh, yeah, we're looking for your husband. And she kind of figures out, you're not here for my husband. And they're robbing the place. But it seems to me like they're after that jewel, right? That's what I figured.
Something, yeah.
Somebody's always after the damn elder gods. Don't they know better?
There's that's that. I don't want to give anything away, but book 2 gets into what you're talking about. And I mean, just to talk about book 2 for a second, I haven't read, but like the plot thickens. So this one, the first book what we're talking about, that reads like an adventure. Yeah, it's like a revenge yarn. The second book, the world is going to kind of get a little bigger, and that what you're talking about is key to it.
Well, and the other thing too is that one of the things we set up in the first book is that when the German military comes to and they're looking for this guy, they have all had different variations of how they've kind of learned about Zadar, and whether it's through dissertations, whether it's through history books or comic books. I mean, so our character he's had the limelight. He's been that guy, that's why when they talk to Rose, she's like, we've had people come around that are just like you, looking at, thinking my husband's a freak,
Mm-hmm.
So that's already been kind of set up, and we'll definitely be touching upon that in later episodes, going back to earlier bits of their lives. But I think that's kind of interesting because, Tarzan never really had anything like that. And so for us just living in a society now where you have all these superhero movies and the characters are going back and forth between their real lives and their caped lives. It's like, well, Tarzan is kind of the first superhero in a lot of ways. So it's like, why not kind of give him a little bit of that cred, where he was a celebrity, and he's not digging it so much.
That was one of the things we put into the writing, was that, like, what you're describing about, like, the porters with the Germans, they know him as a legend or something. One of the German officers knows him from something he'd read in a symposium in somewhere, and the other guy knows about him from a dime store novel.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have these 3 books we'd like to do, and then there's gonna be a prequel that for 3 books, and one of the things we're gonna get into that is the way his reputation grows, and his struggle with that is sort of the core of the next 3 books. So we're peppering that in. It was important to us that people knew who he was, and we saw that, like, he's like a living legend. He's like a living legend, and you're sort of steeped in it but we're in some kind of reality with him, his reality, you know what I mean? But people know who he is. It's,
So let's look toward book 2. I'm really looking forward to seeing how, having read Lovecraft PI and see how Ward kind of deals with him in his own just very sarcastic, I don't give a shit kind of way.
Sure.
I can already imagine, like, how he's just like, I don't care who you are. I don't even know. Is he going to know who he is?
Did you already write this?
On the character, yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny because we thought about that as well, because the idea is that this takes place in 1917. So, I had already built up in my Lovecraft Bible that, Ward had already, he was in World War I.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time he was recruited by the Miskatonic. So World War I isn't quite over yet. And so we thought, well, hell, I mean, it makes perfect sense if we're picking this year for Zadar, and and Lovecraft is around this, we kind of consider this to be his kind of first case file. So he's a newbie.
Okay,
so
that's really cool.
So he's 20 years old in this book, because we've always seen like where he's older in his 30s, he's a little surely, he's still a smart ass, but it's just, and he's a lot cockier in this one too, so there's essences of that where you see where his character is, and you don't want to give too much away, but let's just say that he goes in and out of some of these stories that are coming up, and we follow kind of things kind of split off. So we do follow both characters will be telling two stories of sides of the same coin, and then eventually come back together. And that's kind of the kind of fun with it too, because then Lovecraft's a detective, Zadar's in search of something, so it definitely kind of works with them, helping each other out in that regard.
Because at this point, being that Ward is like so young, and he is just kind of a what do they call it when you're green? I don't know if you're like a green face or what, but basically he's a rookie. Does he know about the Elder Gods yet? Is he familiar with this, or is this like when he realizes, like, oh, there's a whole other world out there?
Yeah, I mean, there's we don't really get into it so much in the second book, but the way I have it kind of laid out is, he knows that stuff's out there. And the way the Miskatonics work is they have old scriptures, and some of the scripture parchments are, intact. Some of them are not. Some of them are old books, so it's very much kind of piecing into stuff all together. It's, I mean, I don't have Google or anything like that. So for them, it's like trying to get these old grimoires and legend books together and trying to kind of sort out all this different type of mythos. So he's still green at a lot of this point, so he's definitely discovering it, but he knows some of it's there. He just hasn't really, at this point, he's 20. So he's interacted with some creatures and stuff, because I have another series that's coming out in October, the Reanimator series. And that picks up with Ward and Herbert West at 17 years old, so this is just a few years before him appearing in Zadar. And in that first issue, he's dealing with, I don't want to give too much away, but he is dealing with very, various creatures that, him and West have kind of, concocted. So not necessarily has he seen a cosmic god yet, but he has dealt with some very kind of unsavory creatures as well as people in various reanimated states.
Now, I'm definitely looking forward to it. You know, you can always count on the support of the Basement Show, and I do love your work. I love H.P. Lovecraft, so pretty much anything you hand me, I'm going to check out.
Yeah,
so,
I gotta say, just as like because writing it with Dave, and you know, Lovecraft is Dave's character, but like I just got to say that he's well used in this book and all of his sort of facets, and it all just sort of fits good with. He's in our book. He's on the case. You know, he's on a case. There's a reason he's there. He's not. It's not just a cameo. It fits into the story really nicely and propels the story forward. And when it happens, like, that makes sense. You know, like it's.
Because we definitely didn't want to just shoehorn him in just as a publicity stunt, so to speak, or sales or whatever. So for us, it was always, you know, if we're going to make Zadar part of this universe, we have to make them all part of this universe and make it work. And, you know, it just makes sense too, because if Zadar's is, you know, as strong as a dozen men, he is kind of an anomaly in himself. So it's like, why wouldn't he appear in this kind of, you know, this universe?
If these guys are studying supernatural things and things that are outside of, like, you know, I don't know, like Scully and Mulder or something like that, Zadar would fit somewhere on that spectrum. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They would be aware. Well, everyone is aware of him, right? So like everyone's that's what we're dealing with. He has a reputation. So when they meet him, everybody knows who he is when they meet him, because there's not too many guys who look like he looks, and he's, you know.
Right. Well, the other thing too is that we'll have come up and a couple of other issues, because when we do a little spin-off stuff, is, you know, we've talked about exploring with Lovecraft that he you know, he's kind of a fanboy for Zadar. He gets it, but he can't obviously show that.
Right.
When he's had other conversations with folks, he's like seen him at the Nickelodeon. You know, he's like caught the movies of this guy. You know, so he kind of gets the both worlds aspect of it, and you know, and I think that's kind of nice. I think it's kind of cool that he's digging this dude, but he also has to kind of deal with him on the level of professionalism and all this crazy stuff that's about to happen. You know.
So this is going to be a 3-issue story arc. This particular one?
We have this, you know, so the first, second, and third issue of this portion of it will wrap up more or less. I mean, we'll still have little tangents that'll go off into what's coming. So we have those, and then we have at least 3 issues that we're working on for like kind of a prequel that takes place, you know, 10 years before that. So that also lends itself, like all the story elements in that. You'll see essences of it, which you'll be seeing in these 3 books, but also that also sets up the story, which will be happening in the final 3 books of, you know, so it's a giant kind of operatic story that we're trying to put together here.
In the order you'll see in the second book a mystery of maybe you saw the first thing he finds is a coin, and so it plays like a mystery, and that's why Lovecraft kind of comes into it. And we're going to go backwards in time after the end of this 3 books, because there's a clue back there in like. In what's propelling this whole first 3 stories. So like you'll see what it is that they're onto. And then when those 3 books are done, we're back to going forward. So it's like, you know, we'll do the Star Wars thing of, the movies, the prequel, and then we'll do the sequel series, but we're not going to face plant on the sequels.
I trust you guys far more than I trust anything that comes out of Disney for Star Wars and movies. The TV shows have been fantastic.
Could we put that on the cover?
Yeah, could we put that on the cover?
Absolutely. You can quote me on that one.
Yeah.
So this is a Kickstarter. Let's talk about everybody's favorite stuff about Kickstarter. What kind of rewards can we look forward to here?
Yeah, so we have the standard rewards. We got the PDF of the issue 2 and issue 1, the print of both. The legend Simon Bisley did our cover for issue 2. He did our cover right back there for issue 1, and he's on it for issue 2. And then Pablo De Bonas, who does our illustrations for the interior. I'm having my boys do a lot of. They're doing wraparound covers for us now as a variant, and it's a pretty dope cover, and it gives a little bit more, lends a little bit more to the second part of the story. So we have those 2. Then we have a challenge coin, which appears in the book, and it has coordinates for what's going to happen. Yeah. And then we have we came up with a family crest because, you know, since he is of noble descent and from England, we figured, you know, it'd be nice to give him his own crest. So I came up with a design for that and worked with Jason Lennox, who does Lords of the Cosmos, and he penned up a really beautiful crest and colored it up. So we have that as a pin and a die cut sticker. And then we have a poster, which I sent you a little earlier today. Our boy Corlin Kruger, who does our covers for Berserkers, one of the things we want to do with Zadar, and we do with our other books too, but also with Zadar, is we also want to do like these print versions of stuff that's to come. So he did this kind of cool like Cannibal Island, with Zadar and Rose, and around a fire pit, with that whole kind of motif around it. So that kind of gives you a little taste of what may come down the road. So we have that as a poster on there, and then it's a pretty small campaign in that regards. And then we have all our typical add-ons with Berserkers, Lovecraft, and Zadar. If you wanted to pick up back issue of that.
Oh, I definitely want to pick up issue 1 since I inexplicably missed the first Kickstarter. But I'm assuming it was over the pandemic, so it was probably a whiskey coma.
Yeah. See, it's been a weird, yeah.
Right.
You got me started on the challenge coins, Dave. I got my other 2 right over there on my Lovecraft shelf. So I'm going to definitely have to pick up one of those as well.
Cool. Yeah. So, and the other thing too is in book 2 is that we have a group that we've created called the Black Hand. And so one side of the coin that their insignia is on there. So you start finding out a little bit more about them and who they are and what type of organization, they are and what they're, kind of what their motivation is a little bit in this, but you'll find out more in the next, and definitely issue 3.
That's I'm not the biggest collector of stuff. I've got my old school Star Wars, a few of those things left, but but like the coins to me are like the coolest thing, because what I like about it is that it's part of the story. It's like you're pulling it straight out of it's a prop from the comic book.
Mm-hmm.
That's all Dave's idea. I just think that's a cool idea, and you'll see when you read the second book, it's kind of an important little thing. And
what we did too is because normally we have the coordinates on the faces of the coins. This time I had the coordinates on the rim, because I just wanted to give it.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, I just wanted to try something a little different, and it actually it ended up being a story point too. So it actually worked out. I mean, I can't remember what came first, but I don't know. I just wanted to do something different for this book, and for this series. So it wasn't exactly like the Lovecraft stuff,
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. You can count on the support of the Basement Show.
I appreciate it.
Tell us what else you've got going on, and tell us how everybody can find you on social media.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So right now, tomorrow at noon on June 14th, we'll be launching our Kickstarter. So that's going to run for 30 days to basically mid to late July. Our coins and our pins are all done. They're sitting at my house, and the books, Ryan and I are editing up the final version of Zadar 2. And so that'll all be ready before the end of the campaign. So everybody's going to get their stuff, within 2 to 4 weeks right after the campaign. So I'm trying to really, with our company, with Darkside, I'm really trying to push, when the Kickstarter's done, you get your stuff within a few weeks. So it's just like a comic store, a comic distribution company, it's really what we're trying to kind of build for. So you can find us on Kickstarter, Twitter under Darkside Media, Lovecraft PI, Instagram under Darkside Media and Lovecraft PI, and Facebook under Darkside Media.
Pretty much exactly like Pete's Basement, just all of these social medias, bang.
Yeah.
I'm on LinkedIn too.
You can find us anywhere.
Right, exactly.
I cannot stress to you how important it is, how great it is that you've got such a short window of delivery time. Because how many times that, Kickstarters I kick in on that sound really cool, and then it's like 6 months, 7 months down the road, I forget about it, and I'm like, something gets delivered, or maybe something don't get delivered, and I'm fucking out $100 or whatever it was. I don't even know.
100%. I mean, I got a package in the mail. I'm like, this weird box. I'm like, oh, that was like a year and a half ago, like a long time. Like you said,
that's when you got to hold it up to your ear. Like, is it ticking? Like, who hates
right? Because you're right. You completely forgot about this, and some weird cardboard box comes, and you're like, what is this? And you open it up, and you're like, I guess you're pleasantly surprised and sort of also. But anyways, Dave is really it prides himself in that, and I just got to say, like, it's so great to be working with him because he handles all that stuff so well and understands what you're saying. It's important to get the
it's funny because I talk to a lot of people about Kickstarters all the time because I've been doing them now since Kickstarter started, and now that I've kind of finally figured it out a little bit better, for me the key is to really be on the hop about that, and for us, we're not just doing one book. We have Zadar, Lovecraft PI, We have the new Reanimator series. We have Berserkers, and then I have a new series that's going to start next year called Honey in the Dreamlands, which is a character that's going to be just in Dreamland. So for me, it's and the way Kickstarter works is they only allow you to do one campaign at a time until the next one's fulfilled. So I mean, it'd be really hard for us to kind of keep this momentum going if we had to wait for the money. And then it takes my guys 4 to 6 months to work on a book, and us as well. So, at that point, it's like, okay, well, you guys have, the magic is gone. Like you guys, like you said, you're waiting for this thing to show up. But for us, it's even worse because I can't put anything out for 6 or 7 months.
Right.
So I'm losing money on that end. And so I look at it as, once the campaigns are done, we send everything out. It's great because then I immediately, I've got 15 shows that I'm doing cons this year. So for me, I could just walk out the door with a stack full and I'm ready to go, whereas if I had to wait 6 months, I've burned through, 15 shows that I can't go to and I have no product. You know what I mean? So it just helps perpetuate the business better.
Oh man, guys, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
Obviously, everybody follow Darkside Media and Lovecraft PI on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Kickstarter, everything. Dave's got a whole bunch of new projects. Ryan, do you have a separate Instagram or anything, or are you still on Darkside Media as well?
No, I mean Ryan Matta art at Instagram. You can see some of my not so hot drawings.
Don't be silly. Don't be silly.
You can see why I wrote this and didn't draw it. Yeah.
He's not alone.
Yeah.
So thanks, Pete.
And you guys know how to follow us. Hit us up, questions@petesbasement.com, facebook.com/Pete's Basement, Instagram, Twitter, etc. @Pete's Basement. And let us know what you're reading. Let us know what you're doing over the course of the summer. And we'll see you next time. Gentlemen, salud.
Thanks, Pete. Cheers.
Pete's Basement is copyrighted
2022.
Ripped Productions. All rights reserved, so go fuck yourself.